Well, it's nothing like waiting till you're 60 years old before you speak in public. But one good thing about this, I've learned a lot of people I can blame about the racing service. But on my end of it, I mean, we do use a lot of science, but it's 7 days a week training. We have 2 hours to get the track ready for racing. We're always under the gun. One trainer wants one thing, one trainer wants another thing. And we
Just keep talking, don't ignore me.
probably loud enough anyway. We usually, I try to keep, as watching some of these videos, where the horse goes down, breaks over, I try and keep about 2 inches of cushion underneath the horse's hoof ground. And that's where I usually do my testing, is after a race, right after the horse is run. That's where I go in and actually look at the racetrack and see what we're doing. In order to set up a racetrack, you're setting your racetrack up 2 days before your race. I mean, you're hoping that the weather comes out the way you want it to, but we're usually looking a couple of days ahead, trying to know how much we're going to cut, how much cushion that we're going to be able to keep if we have a lot of rain in the forecast. We're going to tighten it up a little bit, and the horses usually feel that during training. And you hear a lot of people, they want their training track and their racing surface to be the same. Well, it can't be. I mean, you have 100, 150 horses come on the racetrack. There's not 10 horses. And so, you have to set it up a little bit tighter, a little bit wetter. And because you have to keep the moisture down in deep. We've been lucky at Belterra. Or I'm lucky at Belterra because they believe in me enough that they let me pretty much do anything that I think I need to do. Compaction's a big thing for whenever your gate goes across your racetrack. Every time it sets up and comes back off, you'll always end up with a little bit of a hump. I've seen horses trip on those humps. We put the same tires as what we have on our turf track, trying to spread the compaction out enough where you don't end up with all those humps in the racetrack. I love some of the things, the monitors on the saddles. I mean, a lot of this stuff, I think it would be great for information for me. I'd be able to tell if the horses are running about the same every day. During the race, if I have 10 horses out there and 10 of them run fine, or 9 of them run fine and 1 of them runs bad, then I know it's the horse, it's not my track. And so, I look forward to more science and data that we can have in this industry, because it is scary the ways that we get thrown under the microscope sometimes. And I probably am better at answering questions than talking about the racing surface. I mean, over the years, I've worked winter tracks, summer tracks, wet tracks in different areas of the country, the West Coast, the middle of the country, and now up here. And almost all have about the same problems. Everybody thinks it's one or the other, but we all have the same problem. It's just some of us aren't under the microscope as bad as others are. And I've always listened to the jockeys, but also have to listen to the jockeys in a group. I can't listen to one jockey. I can't listen to one trainer. I've got to listen to everybody in a group. And like I said, my end up was going to be short and sweet. Everybody that got to go over a little bit, I'll make up for them. Does anybody have any questions?
I think it's important because Steve brought up one of the major factors that we all need to think about, and that's weather. weather influences those surfaces. He brought that up. And I think everybody kind of forgets that it's constantly changing. And that's what the track superintendents are doing. So let's ask some questions to Steve and do some stuff.
What kind of testing do you use in setting up your track?
Most of the time, well, at previous track, I had my own lab. So I used to do, for years, I did sieve analysis. I do probably 600 sieve analysis a year. And what I found out doing that is your material separates. And you'll end up getting a little bit sandier on top, and then that's when the horses usually end up getting a little back in sore, cuppy track. And so we came up with methods of putting a little silt and clay in high concentrates when the weather would work for us. Because when the wet weather, you can't put in and cold weather, you can't put in the silts and clays. And so we had it where we could actually put it on within 3 days. We could change the surface of our track within about 3 days with the silts and clays.
How often are you testing?
Now, I don't test as much because I don't have a lab. I test now probably 12 times a year and at different spots of the track. Then I was testing, I do 8 to 12 tests a week. And then we also came up with, as you're watering, as the water trucks would come around, they were actually washing the silts and clays off the sand particles and washing them down, and then that's where we get our 2 inches. We changed our watering on our water trucks, trying to get a bigger droplet. It helped a lot, but the horsemen didn't really appreciate that too much because it was different than what they were used to, so we had to come up with a different way of that mimicked more of a rainfall, because we always had our best track after rain. And I am a big believer in a lot of moisture. I mean, to the point where usually the jockeys are mad at me. But it seems like it's more forgiving. And if it seems like it's getting a little bit hard, I can drop the harrows and harrow a little bit deeper as long as I have the moisture in it. If the track is dry, if I drop the harrows and cut a little more cushion, then it starts getting cuppy and the horses start hitting the bottom, and you'll see where they slide. They'll end up with their sore-footed. And so.
How do you feel about the bases? I mean, is it way more expensive to put in a good, I mean, to me, I would think that the base is everything. Explaining how that process, how you feel about that process, about what you set your surface on.
I've worked with limestone base, clay base, and I generally try to keep about 8 inches of compacted cushion. And I never cut more than 4.5 to 5 inches of that compacted cushion. So I keep about a couple of inches of compacted racing surface before it ever gets to the base. So they never make it to the base. But I do recommend every 2 to 3 years, everything gets stripped off to the outside and a visual inspection. And I'm a big believer in that because I have seen problems. And I'm not much on tilling. I don't like tilling a track. If I can't drop a harrow and cut it, then you're getting into road construction. I don't think we're looking for road construction.
I think
This is going to be a tough question.
Oh, no, actually, you're exactly right. I think it's very important that you take the racetrack to the outside and see the base with your own eyes and make sure there's no low spots on height. It's nice and uniform. You can actually almost come and sweep it and have it nice and clean and then put it back. And it also helps when you grade it to the outside, you're mixing the material. And then when you grade it back down, you're mixing the material again because the silt and clay content tends to settle down to the bottom more. So if you mix it, the horse is now, if it's all set, you saw it with your own eyes and it's mixed, the horse is going to get it a little bit better and you get that bounce back. So, it's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was over a few years of testing And the testing is actually, I worked with an engineer and a soil scientist for 3 years. I went to their labs almost every day, and except during the racing season, and we developed. I just have a preschool degree on soil science, and but I know what the soil scientists talk about, and I can understand them a little bit better, and it's pretty interesting. I wish I would have went a different way when I was 18 years old. And the soil science is very interesting.
How much breakdown do you think is contributed to the conditions, track conditions? Do you see more as we're deteriorating in condition, or?
Well, over the years, the last few years, I mean, most all of the racetracks have, we got better equipment now, better maintained equipment. Just about any kind of a piece of equipment that we want or feel like we need. So I would say most all of the tracks are now staying at a fairly consistent level. And you know, other than being consistent, is you have to train your horse to the conditions. I mean, you know, if the track's hard one day, you know, it might be better off to leave the horse in the barn or just get it out of the stall. One thing that I've noticed, I've never had to work with the 2-year-olds like what we have up here, is when we do have a sealed racetrack and it is pretty tight, that's when we have a few problems. And I remind some of the trainers that might not be the best time to be working a horse. You know, when we're sealed up for 10, 12 days, the track does set up tight, but if we don't keep it set up tight, then you start getting it where it rolls, and then that's even worse. And the horse paths, stalls. I mean, I go in the stalls after the race meet, and they're dug out, there's holes, these horses are standing on these uneven surfaces, and you can't tell me that that doesn't contribute to some of the problems that they have. Yeah, their shed rows are uneven, their stalls are uneven, they're all even when they come in, and we make sure of that, but this gets a little bit neglected over the 90 days. So, but I think that's another thing that we also need to kind of keep in mind and look at.
Thank you, Steve, so very much.